anytime the skeleton moves or the posture moves, you ultimately affect muscles and fascial lines and how they are able to activate or strengthen or hold the body up. One of the easiest connections would be flat feet influencing the lower back and causing low back. And that's a really good mechanical example of how feet can impact the rest of the body.
Do you want to wake up feeling like you're stepping into who you're meant to be, into the best possible version of you? What if I told you that the key to your best life, health, and happiness are all around you? You just have to find what works for you. I'm Hope Pedraza, and I believe that there isn't just one way to live a healthy and meaningful life, and that all you need is a little inspiration to make changes that last from the inside out. Each week, I'll be sharing tangible tips and inspirational interviews to help you on your journey. These are the steps to take to improve your life and live with purpose. This is Hopeful and Wholesome. Hey y'all, welcome back to Hopeful and Wholesome. Today I have on the show Dr. Emily Splichal. She is a functional podiatrist and human movement specialist and the founder of EBFA Global, creator of the Barefoot Training Specialist certification, author of Barefoot Strong, and CEO and founder of Naboso Technology. She has over 20 years of experience in the fitness industry, and she's now dedicating her medical career towards studying postural alignment and human movement as it relates to barefoot science. And that is what we're talking about today. We are talking about the connection between your foot health, yes, your feet, and your overall health and longevity. And when I tell you Dr. Emily comes with some bombs for y'all on your foot health, I'm not joking. She's going to talk about functional podiatry. And like I told her at some point in the episode, like, who knew we could talk about feet for so long? There's so much to talk about. And she is going to make so many connections between overall movement and function of just your overall body. We talk about pelvic floor and your foot health. Like, there's so many connections to your body. I love this episode. Let's jump in. All right, y'all, let's jump in. I'm here with Dr. Emily, and we are talking all about your foot health today. And this is a functional conversation that we haven't had on the show, Dr. Emily. We've talked about all other kinds of functional health things. So I'm excited for this one. And as someone who has a appreciation for my feet, I was a dancer for 20 however many years and, I have a Pilates studio. So I love this conversation. I am so glad to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Of course. Thank you. It's a pleasure. And I hope all the listeners learn some cool stuff about the feet.
Yes, I know they will. I know for a fact they will. And I want to start off by asking you, because again, I have taught Pilates for, I don't know, at this point, 17, 18 years, I don't know, a long time. And I was a dancer. So we're all about the feet and Pilates, right? We do the footwork and all this stuff. Can you explain from your functional doctor perspective, why is it important to have strong feet? What is the deal with foot health? Why is it important?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think of feet as our body's foundation. Obviously, it is at our base. It is the only contact point between the body and the ground. So it plays a very important role in posture and movements, how we relate to the ground. And then optimal foot function is really based around both mechanics, meaning, high arch, low arch foot type. So little mechanical stuff, range of motion, but then also sensory side of foot health. And that would be the skin in the bottom of the foot, how we actually feel the ground, feel the feet, feel impact forces. And then we use that information to control movement with every step that we take. So it's really a balance of that foundation mechanically and sensorially. How do we relate to it? How do we strengthen it? How do we recover it?
Mm-hmm. And how does it affect the other parts of our health? How does our foot health affect the rest of the body?
So any sort of imbalance, break, instability in our foundation or our foot posture will ultimately translate all the way up the rest of our posture. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes I give an analogy of the foundation of a building or a home. If it's not stable or sound, the rest of that infrastructure, it can't be stable.
Right.
So it's a really good analogy to help the listeners kind of grasp that concept.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, especially if you think of flat feet where your arches collapse in, the legs rotate in, the pelvis rolls forward.
Yep.
Anytime the skeleton moves or the posture moves, you ultimately affect muscles and fascial lines and how they're able to activate or strengthen or hold the body up.
Yeah.
One of the easiest connections would be flat feet influencing the lower back and causing low back. And that's a really good mechanical example
Yeah.
of how feet can impact the rest of the body.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's an easy one for us to picture, like how that would affect the rest of the body. And I think it's not something, I really think it's not something we think about much. And I think about it probably more than the average person, again, just because I teach Pilates and we're barefoot and we're doing the footwork and, working through the feet and all the things. But I don't think it's something that we think about that much. And I know for me, my dad passed away some years ago from complications from muscular dystrophy. And so when his started progressing, one of the first things was his hands and it was his feet. The first thing we noticed is he started getting that shuffle, right? He didn't have like the mobility in his feet. So is it for you, maybe you can kind of speak to this. Is it more important? The flexibility piece and the strength piece are both important, right? Is there one more important than the other? Like what aspects of the feet are more important for our overall like posture and that kind of thing?
Yeah, both mobility and strength would be important. And that actually kind of leads into what I consider 3 pillars of foot health.
Oh, yeah.
Which are foot awareness. So that is the perception of the foot. That is really where my passion lies because it's the least spoken about, but would be the foundational pillar.
Right.
In a sense. Then from there would be the strength side of it. Obviously, we have to have mobility for strength, but really I focus on the strength side. The strength of the foot that I focus on and that I advocate is integrated strength, which means that your feet have to be connected to your center of gravity, which is your core. So your lower abdominals, pelvic floor, all the wonderful Pilates muscles are very much connected to your foot strength.
Right.
So it's getting people to appreciate that. And then finally, the recovery. You could put the mobility under recovery if you would like, but the recovery is also circulation. So I want people to realize, okay, what are we doing to maintain healthy circulation? Because ultimately that ties into the rest of the body as well.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So if we break those down a little, what are some ways, like for people listening, these are some takeaways here. What are some ways we can build foot strength?
Yeah. So foot strength, there are 2 exercises that are the best or the easiest way to strengthen the feet. First one is called short foot. Short foot is really an activation of the toes. So true foot strength really lies within your toes, and the action that the toes are doing functionally is that they anchor down into the ground. So they're pulling down into the ground. This is not like a towel crunch. So people have seen that somewhere, right? Or physical therapy. It's not towel crunches. We don't want to claw the feet in.
Right.
We want to lengthen and extend the digits and then press down from there. I think of it almost more like a gecko.
Yeah, like spreading their, yes, that's a good image.
And that can be taught through what's called a forward lean. A forward lean is where I would have someone stand nice and tall, feet shoulder width apart. Obviously, ideally, I want to teach them how to find a neutral arch, which we can talk about if you want, but you would rotate into a neutral foot. And then you imagine that you are stiff as a board. Stay stiff as a board, and then you're going to slightly lean the body forward, just ever so slightly, and then you bring it back vertical. And then you sway forward, back vertical, and you do this 5 to 8 times. Every time you lean or sway forward, your toes will reflexively pull into the ground. You're actually activating a postural reflex because your body doesn't want to fall over.
Right.
And that action of the toes pulling down is the same action if you did a classic quote unquote short foot, which is a formal exercise introduced by Dr. Yanda, and it is pushing your toes into the ground. I teach people that when they push their toes down, I want them to lift their pelvic floor and I want them to exhale at the same time. So we're creating a stack or a integration, if you want to think of it. But toes down, lifts arch, lift pelvic floor, exhale, essentially stacking the domes in our body for stability and posture.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So it's because it's not just about the feet. It's like connecting everything from like the bottom up.
Absolutely. Yeah. I want listeners to think of foot strength and how you strengthen the feet, always from an integrated basis, versus if you think of some of those rotator cuff exercises, boring, like, oh my God, can't believe I have to do these, right? Or like a bicep curl.
Right.
Curl is truly not an integrated exercise. You're isolating one muscle. So how can we get foot strength, understanding that your feet are ultimately connected to the rest of the body?
To everything else. Yeah, that makes total sense. And I love that. One of my, the first trainings I did for Pilates, I've gone through classical and then I did more contemporary training. One of the first trainings, she like honed in on the foot, and then we worked on these like articulation of the toes. I never could get it. Like, I mean, she could literally just move one toe at a time and spread her foot. Like the mobility and everything of her toes was just insane. But I just remember how much emphasis she put on the toes, and she worked with a lot of elderly people and how much like that was helping them. So that I can see in my head everything you're saying. We did the whole lean forward, lean back thing. So that makes total sense to me. And I think it is important to note, like, it's not just about the feet, it's applying that to everything else. And that's, I mean, I feel like that's just like everything we talk about on this show. It's all like functional, right? It's putting all of the pieces together. It's like this holistic approach and not just like isolating the one thing. So the other thing I was going to ask you, you talked about the recovery. I wanted to ask you about that part. What does that look like?
So recovery of feet can be doing a trigger point release. So I often will teach patients and advocate doing a 5-point foot release. Instead of rolling the foot out, I much prefer pinpoint pressure and then holding the pressure for 30 seconds. When you hold pressure on one point, you're essentially compressing the tissue and the blood vessels. And then when you release the pressure, you get this rapid influx of blood and oxygen to the tissue. That's part of recovery. You could also think of it as like you're massaging the muscles, almost like foam rolling, right? Or trigger point release,
right?
If it's a word that maybe some of the listeners are familiar with, but it's doing a 5-point release, 5 points, 30 seconds. I like that done every single day. If you want to incorporate that at the end of the day, that's great. Obviously releasing your lower leg. So is that using a foam roller, a Theragun? Like what is friendly to the listener? We just want to get a little bit of the calf and the lower leg muscles because they're used a lot.
Right.
And then other things, like at Naboso, my company, we have textured socks. Texture is a way that you can increase circulation just by walking around. So that's awesome.
That sounds amazing.
Yes, it feels amazing as well. Yeah. You can use vibration platforms. Vibration is another great way to support circulation of the feet, relax the muscles. That's another technique.
Yeah.
Those are probably the main key ones, like Normatec boots. Those are good. Those support circulation. To me, really, the recovery is that circulatory side. Massage, foam rolling does have a benefit of circulation,
right,
in addition to myofascial. But, it's that awareness of like, okay, how are we flushing out everything and fresh blood to the area?
Right. Do you see like the amount that the average person wears shoes? Do you see that as being a detriment to your foot health? Like, should we be barefoot more?
So what I recommend is that people spend at least 30 minutes a day, no shoes, no socks, totally barefoot walking around. So get that natural stimulation of the feet and the skin and the nerves, all of that, at least 30 minutes, which is not a lot of time. However, based off of your question, I know many, many people, especially as we get older, that will wear shoes from the moment they wake up all the way to the moment they go to bed. And they wear shoes in their home, they have house shoes.
Right.
Everywhere is always shod. And yes, that does start to create a sensory disconnect, a need to actually use your foot muscles. You do lose foot mobility. A lot of shoes don't have what's called torsion.
Right.
So if you take a shoe and you try to like twist it like a rag, that's torsion. And that's a really important feature of shoes that people don't think about. They might just think of it as the stack, like the cushion under it, or is there a wide toe box? But we also want to have kind of that flexibility in the shoe. So yeah, I really wish that people would at least get that 30 minutes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Do you think, because you're talking about barefoot, and it's so funny because, and this isn't like throwing shade on anybody here, but just speaking facts, there's a lot of studios around that require people to wear like grippy socks and sticky socks when they come to do Pilates, which I get there's a sanitary reason. Like I get that. But at my studio, just because I have had so much training on footwork and feet and this and that, it's not something we require. Like, if people want to wear it, they can. But it's so hard. Like I try to emphasize this to people, like the importance of being barefoot. And it's a hard point for us to get across. But you're saying that it does make a difference when we have socks and we don't have socks, even though we feel like socks aren't, that's not like it's giving us the quote support that shoes are, but it does make a difference with like that sensory part, right?
100%. Unless you're using textured socks.
Like yours,
right?
yes.
The texture on the inside, not to be pushing my products.
No, please do. Yeah.
It is the only sock that has sensory in the sock for
inside the sock
purpose. Yeah. And show a sock for those that there's the actual texture.
Oh, now that looks fantastic.
Inside, so
I need to get those.
Yeah. And there's grips on the outside.
Oh, perfect. There you go.
So there you go. But let's say in general, if someone is wearing a standard sock,
right,
no texture,
right,
is still a sensory disconnect. And a great analogy that people can think about is think about like mittens or gloves.
Right.
Even gloves create a degree of sensory disconnect.
Totally.
I remember when I was doing surgery and going through like my residency and stuff like that, and you have to relearn how to like feel and handle like the blades and the instruments.
Yeah, with the gloves on. Yes. Yes.
And I'm just like, wow, like there's just sometimes I'm like, I wish I could just take them off.
Yes.
That small hand coordination is really important. So it does make a difference. The other thing that I would say around barefoot stimulation and really mass consumerism or, kind of mainstream is that we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
So what you think and how you're moving today, shod or always taking classes with socks on, grippy socks and things like that, that to you, that is normal or typical movement.
Right.
Once you actually take a class or you experience something, no socks, no shoes. I mean, I've seen many people just like,
yes, totally.
The light bulb goes off or like the light bulbs change. And it really does make a big difference.
Yeah, no, I totally see that. And I've seen it even when people go just from without shoes to just socks. Cause they're like, oh no, they're like dead set on like, let me do this class. I'm like, no, these are barefoot classes. And it's like it's a whole different thing. So yeah. And I could totally see that too. Just taking the socks off, it does really make a difference. Yeah. And yeah, no, I love that explanation that you have for that. So when people have thinking about like, kind of like faulty postures, right? And maybe just of the feet, like you talked about the flat foot or like a collapsed arch kind of thing. Are there ways, because I mean, I see this a lot and we kind of do like, we're looking at kind of postural assessments of people and stuff in a classroom setting. Are there ways that people can like rebuild? Like, can you rebuild that? Can you, like, if you have a flat foot and you have a collapsed arch or whatever, like how can you rebuild those faulty foot postures, positions?
So that one I'm going to have to answer like a politician.
Okay.
Say that it does depend.
Okay.
Just because there are so many different types of flat feet. And I'm quoting that for those that aren't seeing the video, where some of it could be ligament laxity, some of it could be strength.
Okay.
Is it just a little bit of instability in the rear foot, or is the whole midfoot kind of dropping?
Gotcha.
So, and it's a little bit hard to kind of really elaborate that.
Sure. No, that makes sense.
And I teach other professionals, and I do this over like hours and hours so that they understand it. But what I can say high level for the listeners is even if you have a totally collapsed ligament lax, which means it's more structural foot, you still get a benefit from doing short foot strengthening, foot awareness training, find neutral, find how your feet influence your pelvis. So there's still a benefit to an understanding of the foot type and the connection.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Now, you being fully committed and you doing these exercises every day for a year, and I actually get patients like that. And they're like, Doc, I've been doing all these exercises for a year and my foot didn't change a bit. And then I put their foot and I was like, I could have told you that.
Yeah.
I feel bad that they were so dedicated to it.
Yes.
But I was like, there really are certain foot types that don't.
Sure.
And just for clarification, that doesn't mean I would never say don't do
right.
that.
Right. Because they're still getting benefits, even if it's not like, quote, fixing the thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And I mean, it makes sense because like I've had clients and I have clients now with like pretty severe scoliosis, and, you know, I highly doubt them doing the Pilates is going to totally fix their huge curvature, but they're getting the benefits, you know, they're still getting benefits. So yeah, that makes total sense. So when you're looking at kind of like symptoms, right? Like people get, like for me, like shin splints. It's funny. I was just having a conversation. My husband just got some new running shoes and he's all excited about the springiness and the whatever, the carbon something or other. There's all these sick in the shoes. We were talking about shin splints. And I know I've had shin splints, you know, a gazillion times in my life. So it's like things like shin splints. There's some people at Masu that have had like neuropathy, things like plantar fasciitis. Like, are those things like these exercises and all this like strength and mobility and recovery, are all these things, can they help kind of correct these things? Can they help prevent these things? All these kind of, you know, symptoms we get in our feet.
So the ones that you were describing that I would say yes, would be shin splints is one that I would put similar to plantar fasciitis, Achilles tendonitis. Those are probably the three big ones. Stress fractures, technically, those are looped in for a similar reason.
Right.
Even IT band issues, like an IT band bursitis, you can find that. Medial knee pain, that's another one. And essentially, it has to do with when we move, or if we're running, or we're doing something quite dynamic, there is a very rapid stabilization that has to occur in the foot. It has to be able to contract very quickly. So when I strengthen the foot, thinking about these injuries and that demand on the body, is I train very specifically around timing based. So maybe this will hopefully help the listeners to some degree, is when you think about foot strength as it relates to the body, it can't be all just engage, contract, lift, right? Things are contracting very quickly. So can you contract and relax the foot very quickly? When I teach short foot in its kind of stacked way, I'll have people do kind of like a side lunge, and then step your feet back together. And when you come back together from the side lunge, I need you to really quickly push your toes down, lift your pelvic floor, and exhale. So it's like and I need that really quickly contract that. And then I build it into, you know, bounding, box jumps, step down. So I try to do things where there's a rapid shift in direction or a rapid experience of ground contact. That's ultimately how you have to train the body. If everything is too concentric or too slow and controlled, well, we could think of some practices that are very slow. It won't transfer to dynamic movements. And that's where you'll see injuries and think, oh, but I've been doing yoga for however long. How am I still getting plantar fasciitis if I do yoga, right? It was obviously not a quick contraction practice. So that's what I would just kind of encourage the listeners to think of, like, okay, hey, running's really dynamic. You're landing on a single leg.
Yes.
Can you also train your foot single leg so that it transfers? So everything, athletic performance in the human body is about timing and transfer. Those two big things.
That makes so much sense. When you have people who, and I'm just thinking about, just because I've heard this before, when you have people who are like getting used to the barefoot thing, right? Like maybe, like you're saying, they're the people that wear their shoes from the time they wake up till they go to bed, and they are like not used to being barefoot. And I know I've heard people say like, oh, well, you know, my feet start to ache or my feet start to hurt, right? Which in my head, I'm like, that for me, and you know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like a lot of times that's like a weakness thing. Like, well, yeah, your feet aren't used to working that much. You got shoes on all the time. So can you speak to if people listening are like, yeah, that's me. Like, I can't go barefoot because my feet hurt. Like, is there is it just something where it's like you just have to build up the strength and allow that to kind of pass? Is there things you can do to kind of mitigate that? How do you deal with that kind of thing?
Yes, there's a couple things. Is one, as you're transitioning, let's say you're transitioning from a traditional shoe to more like a minimal shoe, because I get asked that a lot,
Yeah.
right? So
Yes.
like a Vivo Barefoot or something. Or you're transitioning from a traditional shoe to like totally barefoot training or something.
Right. Right.
Then you want to go back to my 3 pillars, right? And this is really almost before you transition or as you're transitioning, right? So you are, okay, do I feel my feet? Am I consciously thinking about my feet as I'm doing transition, right? Which sounds a little like duh or kind of silly, but a lot of
but it's not.
It's not, because a lot of people be like, oh yeah, I train barefoot, and then they're swinging a kettlebell barefoot, but they don't even think about the toe.
Totally.
The arch isn't neutral. They're like, there's no consciousness, right?
Yep.
So we just want to do it in a very conscious, intentful way. That's the activation, the strength. Obviously, you got to do short foot. You got to get your foot to core connected. If your feet and your core are not connected and you are going minimal or barefoot, you are going to overload the system because you just don't have sufficient strength, as you would say. And then super important is the recovery. Now, the one other aspect of recovery besides just circulation and the neural ball release, or like a ball release to the foot, is time. So there is something that is called a tissue stress theory, and I don't want to put them to sleep. But every tissue in the human body has a threshold.
Yes.
Just distilling, right?
Sure.
Take like a twig, and if I flex a twig and it flex and flex and flex and flex, eventually it's going to break. That's its threshold, right? So when we walk barefoot or we move barefoot, let's say your plantar fascia, you're stressing it. If you don't build in sufficient recovery, you will hit the threshold and you'll get plantar fasciitis, right? So it's an art of introducing stress, because controlled stress strengthens the body, makes us stronger. Controlled stress. You have to build in stress, back off, right? That's the body, back off, right?
Okay.
So, and this is based off a little bit of just experience of bringing, let's say, injured runners from their stress fracture back to peak running without getting injured again in that period, right? And it's about understanding this tissue stress theory and the balance of stress and recovery, and how the human body and the inflammatory response works in the body. So I'll tell patients, I'm like, this is an art. This is not science. And you have to listen to your body. You have to really understand and like reach that day's threshold, right? Like, let's just say, whoop, okay, 2,000 steps barefoot, or that's it. That's mine.
That's it. Yeah.
Yours, mine today. And then I'm going to skip a day. Then I'll put those shoes on again. Like, let's say that was Monday. I'll try the shoes again on Wednesday, right? So this is kind of how I'll guide patients or individuals to transition. And part of this is coming from, I lived in New York City for 20 years. So I practiced podiatry for 10 years there. And a lot of it is that I was taking New Yorkers doing 20,000 steps a day from traditional to minimal shoes, walking around the concrete jungle gym. And I had to kind of guide them and navigate them and be like, hey, you're going to wear those Vivos on Monday, but not again till Thursday. You're going to wear them on Sunday. Now we're to Wednesday. And I'd have to map it out for them, because otherwise they would just hit that threshold too quickly, not understand, and then get injured. And then it just falls.
Yeah, that makes, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, I think there's that part of listening to your body that people are just like, oh no, I'll just push through and I'll just keep doing it. And the more I do, the better it is. And that's not really how the body works. And so I love that piece. And I think too, like you were talking about people being like intentional with their movements and stuff. And that's what, it's total plug for Pilates here. It doesn't matter where you do it. I think it's valuable, but I feel like that's, even there's other modalities too, but those mind body, like modalities like Pilates, it is making you think about it. Because, the whole time, if you've got a good instructor where you're listening to them cue about, because I cue that all the time, like, lift up through the arch of your foot, all 10 toes, they're cueing these things. So you are intentionally thinking about where your foot is and where the weight is on your feet and how your weight's distributed. And so I do think that, even if that's not like your 100%, workout of choice, incorporating some sort of mind body movement is valuable in that, in just connecting those pieces like you're talking about, because then you can translate that to your kettlebell class or whatever. And then you're more intentional about your foot placement and that kind of thing. So I feel like that all goes together, and being able to kind of listen and kind of reading your body's internal like threshold, like you're talking about. I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, I love intent. I actually wrote that down. I'm going to write a blog on that.
That's perfect. That gave you an idea.
I'm going to write about like intentional movement and all that stuff.
Yes.
Love it.
Yes.
But it makes a difference for those that truly have embodied intentful movements or intentful workouts. You also don't have to work out as hard, because
right.
repetition is very intentful. So
yes.
Maximum recruitment.
Yes.
So that's also like for the listeners, if you want to be time efficient.
That's exactly it. Yes. It's so funny you say that too, because I had a one-off session last week with a gal who comes to my studio, and she wanted to do like a one-on-one. She's like, I just want you to look at me and like, tell me what I'm doing wrong. Like, just fix all the things. She usually comes to group classes. And so we go through it, and we're talking about, she's got a little diastasis. So we're talking about that and pelvic floor and this and that. And then she does my mat Pilates class right after. And she was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe how much harder I feel like I worked, like doing everything right. I was thinking about everything, and I feel like I worked so hard, but it's like, and then you don't have to work out as much, as it's like, you're thinking about everything. So it's more intentional. And yeah, it makes total sense. It's like a hack. You just gave everybody a nice little workout hack.
There you go.
I love that. That's so good. And yes, I'm going to read your blog post about intentional movement, because that's my motto. And that's like our thing in Balance, my studio, is move with purpose. So it's like, have purpose to why you're moving and how you're doing it and why you're doing it. Like, so I'm totally on board with that. Okay. So I feel like I could talk about feet. Who knew we could talk about feet for so long? But as we kind of need to wrap up here, do you have any you've given so many tangible tips here, but do you have any last minute, like top 3 kind of tips or things to get started with kind of building strength and mobility and really putting a focus on the feet that you can leave listeners with?
Yes, some stuff that we didn't mention yet was about toes and like toe spacers. People, once you kind of get into the foot space, you'll run into them on social media or something. I love them. I love toe spacers, which for the listeners, if they're not familiar with it, it is not the pedicure thing. It is not really silicone, but like a silicone-like material of a spacer that goes in between all 5 toes, slides on, stays on your foot. They are a great way to recover your feet. They could be used at the end of the day. They're stretching and opening up all the muscles in the fascia of the forefoot, but really good for aligning the toes, bunions, if you happen to have.
I was just about to say the bunions. My sister has one right now, and I'm like, I need the toe spacers.
Yeah, when people have bunions or hammer toes, plantar fasciitis, any of that stuff, I will then want them to wear them when they do Pilates, when they do yoga, in their shoes. So they're really versatile, and they really optimize the toes. So that's one tip.
Yes.
Another one that we didn't speak about is earthing or grounding, which is being outside on the ground, dirt, and you're just connecting with the planet, with the earth, which has a natural negative charge. Our body, inflammation, aging has a positive charge.
Right.
Or you could think it almost like an acid and a base. So there's a base. Maybe this is like traumatizing chemistry. And then the body is acidic, and aging is acidic, inflammation.
Yes.
Like an acid. And you essentially want to negate or cancel out all that positive or the acidity, the inflammation. So it's a really great way to naturally do that, to just kind of match the circadian rhythm. Really good for circulation as well as inflammation. So that is second one. My last one that I would say is that people should do at least one thing every day for their feet, even if it's just releasing the feet. To me, that's the easiest one. At Naboso, we have a neural ball that splits into 2 pieces, like 2 domes. Just put that in front of your bathroom sink. Don't ever move it. And just when you brush your teeth,
Yeah.
stand on them. Even if you're not
That's
doing
perfect.
the exact 5 spots that we talk about, you're just releasing the feet, you're getting the texture stimulation, you're brushing your teeth. You do that twice a day, so you get a release twice a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
To me, that is the easiest intro into thinking about feet.
That is perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm all up for the multitasking. So y'all go get one of those because it's like you don't have to plan something extra into your day. It's like nothing you have to think about. That's perfect. I love that.
Yeah. That's how I think about foot health, is if you can do it at the same time as something else,
right?
Compliance is much higher, which means
totally
to it. So that's what I would say is just like, hey, if I'm doing 2 things at once, I don't even have to like go out of my way. So I really like that.
Yeah, it's that whole concept of habit stacking. Like that's how you make it stick. Yeah.
Habit stacking.
Yeah. Do it. Habit stacking. Now you got another one. You're welcome.
Thank you.
So, and you were saying, because the other habit stacking there too, I guess that's kind of a habit stacking, because you were saying wear the spacers when you're doing your yoga or Pilates, like you wear the toe spacers while you're doing that.
Yep. So you get that stretch or that natural support of toe alignment while doing the rest of your workout, right? So you're weaving in just elevated foot awareness or foot health with something you're going to do anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, right.
Tuesday Pilates or whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah. That's perfect. Such good tips. Oh my gosh. That was like, oh my gosh, y'all just got your money's worth on this one, even though it's free, but you got your money's worth. This was so good. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I do have one more question that I like to ask everybody, but before we do that, can you let everybody know where the best place is to find out more about you? And I do want them to check out everything you're selling for their feet, because everybody needs to go get some of this stuff, y'all. So let everybody know where they find out all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. So the products that I mentioned, from the Neuroball textured socks, we have textured insoles, textured mats, everything is textured, is Naboso, Naboso.com. That is our website. Perfect. It's a global website. And then we're on Instagram, which is Naboso_technology. And then me personally, my podiatry site is my name. So dremilysplichal.com. I am on Instagram, dremily DPM or the Functional Foot Doc. And then all of those will link out to different YouTube channels that have, I probably have 1,000 videos on YouTube by now.
That's awesome.
12 years of no life.
Yeah.
All I do is content. But there's a lot of videos that are very useful. They're educational or they're exercise based. They're, a quick 2-minute foot reset. So you can kind of digest them in a couple different ways based off of how you like things. And then I do have a book called Barefoot Strong, which is available on Amazon. It's a quick little read, $15, Amazon, great Christmas gift.
Yes. Yeah. Get that and some of the toe spacers and all the texture things. You've got like a whole foot health little gift bag for somebody. That's amazing. I mean, I would love that. So that's great. I love it. Thank you so much. This was so good. Like there's so many tangible things here. I mean, this is like, and I, like you said at the beginning, this is like building the foundation of your health. And so I think this is something that is really undervalued and we just don't talk about it enough. So I think this is so important. I love it. It's such a conversation. Okay. Last question I want to ask you that I like to ask everybody. What do you think is the most important thing you can do to live with purpose?
I think the most important thing is to have moments of solitude to connect with your deeper intuition of what that purpose is.
I love that. Intuition. I am big on intuition. And I've got all the podcast episodes that talk about it. So we're on the same page. I love that. It's so good. Thank you so much, Dr. Emily. This was so good. I'm excited to share all these links with everybody. Y'all, all the links that Dr. Emily talked about, those are in the show notes. So y'all go do some shopping and do yourself a favor and start taking care of your feet. Thank you so much, Dr. Emily. I appreciate it.
Of course. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Hopeful and Wholesome, y'all. If you found value in this week's episode, please subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast and leave a review to let me know what you thought. I'd love to know what you find useful in these episodes so I can know how to provide the most value I can to my listeners. And if you have topics you'd like to know more about, I'd love to hear those as well. So shoot me a message on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. It's @TheHopePedraza, or you can visit my website, hopefulandwholesome.com. Thanks, y'all.